Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have noticed that I'm not here and you have just finished your beginning of class reading. So that means that you should be on your reading log that looks just like this on the board, and you should be filling in right now what you read in class for today. So I'm going to ask the substitute to please hit pause now while students fill out the reading log, and that should take about 30 seconds, and then we'll continue this. However, do not put your reading log away, just turn it on to the back. So go ahead and hit pause now. So now that you've already filled out your reading log, I'm going to minimize this one and open up the main one. So you should be on the back side, just like what you see me looking at right here. Okay, so I'd like to point out a couple things that are different. So I'd like for you to notice some things, and I'd like to start at the very top. So at the very top it says, right here, something that is new. So I'd like for you to notice that it says, explain in detail. Because some of the answers I'm getting are really, really short, and now that we're into the first month of the school year already, you guys need to be answering more in detail. So you need to be thinking about what it helped you accomplish that goal if you answered yes, or why you think you accomplished that, and then explaining in detail. So I'd like for you guys to make sure that you're rereading these mini reflection questions carefully, since they've been a little bit modified and enhanced. Again, if you answer no, those have also changed. So on here, it's asking, what do you think kept you from making that goal or achieving that goal this week? What will you change for next week to try to achieve your goal? Explain in detail. When it says making your goal, it doesn't mean creating the goal. It means achieving it. So again, it's asking you to explain in detail, and there are two parts to this question. One here and one here. You need to be answering both of those if you answered no for this portion. The same thing happens on the bottom part. Explain in detail for the second goal, and there are two parts here. Explain in detail for this part and for this part. So I need you guys to be actually reading that, since it's been modified, and making sure that you're doing all those pieces, and as well answering in things that are more than one sentence. But we're not going to do that right now. You're going to do that this weekend and then turn this in on Monday. So do not forget, this is due on Monday. So we know this is due on Monday. Please go ahead. Put this away in your folder right now, and do not forget, due on Monday. You should be putting this away in your folder right now. The sub is also pausing immediately. Okay, students, so the next thing that you need to do is you need to get into your folder and you need to get out the story arc, or the types of story arc worksheet that you got yesterday. Or perhaps you glued them in your notebook. So you need to get these out so that we can talk about them. There were three. So there was the one that says Man in the Hole, one that says Boy Meets Girl, and one that says Cinderella. And if the substitute would please pause now for students to get out this worksheet, that would be really helpful. So the next time you hit play, students should all have the worksheet out. All right, now that you all have this worksheet out, the last time that we were in class together, we talked about which one of these three options you would like to use for your own story arc, for the one that you are planning in my class. Maybe you chose the Man in Hole. Maybe you chose Boy Meets Girl. Maybe you chose the Cinderella type of story arc. So I'd like you right now to take your finger, and I'd like for you to point on your worksheet to the type of story arc you chose last night to do, or yesterday, to do for your story, the one that you're writing for my class, the one that you're deciding to take to publication. Put your finger on that one right now. So this is the one that you've chosen already. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to choose another type of story arc, one that you did not choose last night. That's right, I said another type of story arc, which means if you chose Man in a Hole last night, you will not choose that one today. You can choose one of the other two. For example, again, if you chose Cinderella, you may not choose that one, but you may choose one of the other ones. Basically, what I want you to be doing is trying a second method for your story. That's right. I said a second method for your story arc, which means after today, you will have tried two different ones. Two different story arcs Maybe last night you tried that one. Maybe today you're trying that one. So the way I want you to think about this is, for example, if you started with Man in a Hole last night, you started a little bit higher on the good fortune, which means the beginning of your story starts good and kind of goes down. And perhaps you're going to change to Boy Meets Girl, which means the events from up here before, all the events that you started with high cannot appear at the same place on this one. So you're going to have to reorder your events. So this is actually taking the same events, but putting them in different order, or maybe you have to explain a few different events even. So in the beginning of this one, you would start kind of normal or average. You're not going to start super excited, not going to start with something really, really interesting, but you're going to build to that, and it's going to be, yay, really exciting before it plummets into the problem, or one of the problems. So you're going to have to figure out the order of your events. So the order of your events is going to change because the order or the arc of your story changes. So you're going to have to move things around. Maybe they started here and they're going to have to start here. Your story can't start in the same place. You will notice that both stories do take a dip and end high. But the beginnings are very different, especially. And when that dip happens a little bit later in this one, and in the beginning of this one, it happens in the beginning. So maybe you already started with Man in a Hole and you are going to do Boy Meets Girl, but it also could be the opposite. You could have started with Boy Meets Girl and be doing Man in the Hole. Or you could even be doing the Cinderella story, which is not on this particular example that I'm showing you. So I'd like for you to be thinking about this in your head, about which one you think you want to try today. And I'd like you to take your finger out right now, and I'd like for you to point on your worksheet to the one that you think you might want to try today. You can always change, but put your finger on the one that you think looks the best for you to try today. And as you're doing that, start thinking about how the events are going to change the order and of the story, and how you might have to add or delete a few things at certain points in the story because your arc is now different. So I'm going to have the sub hit the pause button in a few seconds, and I'm going to give you all some time to be writing right now. So as soon as you hit the pause button, or the sub hits the pause button, you will have about 20 minutes to start planning your second type of story arc. But the important thing to remember for this is, you are using the same story that you have chosen to take to publication, the same one, and you are just doing a different arc with that. You are not getting a new story. So this is the same story you wrote about before, the same one you've chosen to take to publication, but you are choosing a second type of story arc. Same story, different story arc. This should be a quiet activity. You should not need to be chatting with your neighbors. This is an individual assignment. So you should use your notebook to make a second story arc on your story. Please begin now. Okay, students, so you should now see this paper. And this is the paper that you're going to be working on tonight. It says finalizing the arc of your story idea. So the first thing I need to have you do is look at the very top. It says circle which type of arc you will use. Now, it's asking you to think about the fact that you now have two different arcs. And it's asking you which of those arcs you are going to use for your final story. So I want you to be thinking about your final story. Which one will be the one that you write? The one from yesterday or the one from today? The first arc that you wrote yesterday or the second arc that you wrote today? This should say arc. So once you have decided that, you will circle the one of the three stories or the three archetypes that you will use for the story you will take to publication. Then, I know it says that you can draw your arc below, but it also says use the back of this page. I think it's probably better if you use the back of this page because there's more room on the back. So please use the back of this page. After you are done doing your arc on the back, it's going to ask you to do a reflection. And this reflection says, why is this arc the best one for your story? Mention why this arc is better than others. What will this particular arc do for the audience? How will this particular arc affect the audience or reader's reactions or understanding of the story? What will it do for the telling of the story as the writer? So what I'd like for you to do is answer these questions in here and try to do a detailed reflection below. That means try to answer as much of those as you can and put as much detail in your reflection here so that you're thinking about the arc that you have planned. The last thing it's going to ask you to do is look at the reflection, below the reflection where it says a final check. So the final check is asking you to do what many writers say is a way to make sure that your story's on track. So it says, professional authors sometimes say that a writer knows he's on the right track if he or she can say what his or her story is about in 1 to 2 sentences, sort of like a 1 or 2 sentence summary. It sounds easy at first until you try it. Now, if your story is not on the right track, you're going to have trouble doing this. So the example that I've given to you is below, and it says, Esmeralda is a girl who likes being different, but part of her wants to be popular. One day she goes to a party and finds herself having to decide whether it's more important to be popular or to be true to herself. And you can see in there that we have set up some things for the character to be having problems with and some things about the character herself. So we've set up her wants, we've set up a desire for her, but we've also set up a main conflict or a problem that she's going to encounter. So as you can see, this is actually not going to be a novel, this is going to be a story. So if you have too much to say, you may have trouble doing this 1 to 2 sentence blurb or final check about your story. And that might mean that you need to cut down something from your story. That might mean that you need to focus on one part only. So if you can do this part down here okay, you're probably better off and ready to start writing your story when we get there. So your assignment for the rest of this hour and tonight is to fill out the worksheet that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, making sure that you answer the top part, the middle part with the reflection in full detail, and that you do a final check. When you come into class next, on Monday, you will be able to write. You'll be ready to write your story. So you should bring all of this back with you, as well as your notebooks, your readers and writers' notebooks, so that you have things to look at. And don't forget that on Monday, your mini reflection on your reading log is also due.